Welcome to episode 2 of the Questionable Calls podcast. It is Tuesday night, a little after 6:30 Eastern time. Got a bunch of stuff. Got college football with the Jim Harbaugh situation. What's going to happen with the playoff? I think we're coming down to the end. It's going to be mighty interesting here. And then NFL, we're a little bit past the halfway point, and you can start to see it's starting to take shape as to who's a contender and who isn't. Definitely going to talk about the Eagles-Chiefs game also. And then I have some NBA stuff that I wanted to mention at the end. So anyway, but first we wanted to start off with college football because I think this Jim Harbaugh situation, I think it is definitely interesting. It's definitely added some spice and some entertainment to this college football season for sure. I am surprised at how divided people are on this. Like, it seems to me there's no interesting middle point to this. It's either this is the worst thing ever and Michigan had a huge advantage and they shouldn't be allowed to play any more games, or this is no big deal at all and we should just all move on. And I don't think either one of those takes is accurate at all. But I will say I do really enjoy Jim Harbaugh's press conferences, Clark. He's talking about owning chickens and how fantastic the football program is and how he can't. Jim Harbaugh doesn't get sick. He's the iron wall that viruses crash into, and he's just going to eat an apple and do some push-ups, and everything's going to be great.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, is this like a good analogy? I mean, it feels like he's running the football program like it's the military or something. It's like, well, we all got to be pointed in one direction. And, they asked them, what's your level of respect for Ryan Day and what they've done at Ohio State? Well, I think the most important thing is just to focus on the game. And, it's just like no distraction from anything, just, straight ahead. This is all we're focused on. I'm not going to talk about anything else. I'm not going to answer your questions or whatever. It's just, no. I'm in control of this. So yeah, it's a little, it's kind of funny. It's kind of ridiculous. It's kind of weird. It's kind of, I don't know. College football sometimes seems very cultish, the way people are about their particular team. As I drool as I talk. So yeah, that seems kind of odd.
Yeah, I mean, I love Harbaugh. Listen, I want Harbaugh as my football coach. Absolutely. I don't think I want him doing anything else for me, though. I think This is about the only thing he can do, and as far as I can tell, he seems to be a good human being. But yeah, not if you want him to be like an ambassador for your school, not really the guy for that. So I think it's. Now that being said, and since we did a podcast, Michigan accepted the suspension from the Big Ten, so Harbaugh is going to have to miss this weekend's game against Ohio State and Michigan. I think, look, my opinion on this is this punishment thing is pretty much is kind of a joke. I think that the Big Ten is acting like this is a big deal. Like, oh, we're really punishing them. I really don't think this is that big a deal. Harbaugh gets to be around the program. He gets to be at practice. He gets to set the game plan. He gets to do everything else except be on the sidelines during the game. Which to me, and the idea that he's not somehow communicating with the coaches during the game is hogwash. I don't buy that for 2 seconds. So I think this punishment's pretty weak by the Big Ten. I think that they made everybody think they did a lot by, actually, because nobody punishes anybody in college football for the most part. So an actual punishment actually looks like it's a big deal, and I really don't think it is. Also, I think more stuff's going to come out with Michigan, and I think they're going to get hit by the NCAA.
Yeah. So, I think it took me a while to really figure out what my opinion, because we talked about this on the last podcast and I wasn't really sure what I thought, but now I actually have more of a good sense of this. I think one of the issues that seems to be lost in this is Michigan cheated. Now, again, we can talk about how bad was it and all that other stuff, but I do think that sometimes we allow that other stuff to cloud the issue when somebody cheats. We're like, well, did it make that big of a deal? As if they didn't break the rules. And also people, I do want to point this out. If it didn't help them at all, why were they doing it? So, I
Right.
mean, you mean to tell me that Connor Stallions went to all those games and all those tickets were bought and it didn't matter at all? I mean, that just doesn't seem very plausible. And also the other thing is, again, I don't know how much Harbaugh knew or didn't know, but I mean, it seems a little far fetched to me to think that he didn't know. And even if he didn't know about it, he should have. I mean, one of another point that I was thinking about was a lot of people refer to like college football coaches as, well, they're similar to like CEOs of a huge business, and I'm like, okay, fine, that actually makes sense. So you're in charge of a multi-million-dollar, or I don't know how many hundreds of millions of dollars Michigan makes on college football, but it's probably a lot of money. But I think the thing is, if you want to be the CEO, fine. Guess what? You can't have it both ways. Okay. If you're the CEO, then you're responsible for what goes on. So if you didn't know, you should have. And another thing, the whole thing that with the football program being pissed off at, I don't know if they're pissed off at the media or the NCAA or the Big Ten or the other schools in the Big Ten. Like, I don't know what exactly they're pissed off about. But this whole thing where it's like, oh, it's us against the world. Okay, fine. Well, you're part of the school, and the school did something wrong. And so, if you guys want to be, we're all for one and one for all, and we're all moving in the same direction. We're all committed to each other, and we're all like brothers, and whatever other words you want to use. Okay, fine. Well, a lot of times in groups like that, when one person does something wrong, it can affect everybody else.
Yeah, I think that the Michigan against the world thing. I mean, to me, it's the easiest. It is literally the easiest sports motivational tactic of all time. Like they've literally given ammunition to the Michigan coaches who this is the stuff they try to create anyway. That it's a bunker mentality and we're trying to fight our way through this and everybody's against us and whatever. Whether it's true or not really doesn't even matter. Like and in this case, the players didn't do anything wrong. So the play they're literally creating this, us against the world mentality, and it's they actually believe it. So I don't I think it's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous, and I know the media likes to make fun of teams when they act like this. Well, give us respect, and it's like you're Michigan. I don't think you have a problem with respect, but it's just classic. This is classic. This is how sports work. This is how the sports media works. And yeah, we can all take shots at them and act like they're being ridiculous. That's fine. But it really doesn't matter. Sports all comes down to what, Clark? It comes down to, do you win or do you lose?
Right.
And if they win, they get to act however the hell they want, as ridiculous as it is. And I agree with you that it is stupid and ridiculous. But what do you want Michigan to come out and say? You want them to feel the opposite of that. Yeah, well, they cheated, and yeah, well, we'll accept the point. This is not how athletes, especially football players, act.
I get that, and I don't want to be like way too idealistic, but it just, to me, that's one of the things that I kind of don't like about sports, where it's this insular thing, and there's no room for like introspection or like, hey, maybe we did something wrong here. Maybe we can, there's no, it's like politics almost. And it just kind of, to me, it turns me off a little bit because I think it's kind of ridiculous. Like, I don't think that's necessarily a good thing to have, groups that are, sort of cut off from everybody else. The only other point I really wanted to make was, I'm hearing some people make kind of a straw man argument. Like Colin Cowherd keeps doing this. Oh, so you think the only reason they were winning is because of the sign stealing? No. Okay. That's ridiculous. The people who think that are Ohio State fans or people who have an axe to grind against Jim Harbaugh. Okay. So that's ridiculous. Like, I don't think that. I just think that to act like it didn't make any difference, well, why else were they doing it? Like, again, how much of a difference did it make? I don't know. And maybe as the NCAA completes its investigation, we'll find out more. But, stop with this whole, oh, so you're telling me that's why they're winning? No, I'm not telling you that. Stop clouding the issue. Like, I'm just trying to point out the fact that they did cheat and they should get punished for it. Now, they've been punished a little bit, which is, as you pointed out, was kind of ridiculous. the NCAA, as Bruce Feldman was saying, like the Michigan may get smacked by this once the investigation concludes because Harbaugh's already got some other stuff going on, and I think it's kind of warranted as far as the should they be excluded from the college football playoff this year. I honestly don't know. That's an issue I haven't really wrapped my mind around yet to actually have a,
Well,
go ahead.
here's something I was thinking about this today that kind of bothers me. That people are acting like some Danny Cannell was making this argument. Well, JJ McCarthy the last couple of games, when they haven't been able to steal the signs, hasn't been playing very well. Okay, first of all, what I want to there's a couple corrections there. Number one, this story came out in early October. You don't think the Big Ten teams knew they were stealing signs before it came out in the media? Of course they did. So this argument that this season, oh, well, things changed when the story came out, yeah, that's kind of nonsense. And the other thing is, if Michigan was so good at this, why didn't they win the championship last year? Like this idea that, oh, well, they stole the signs and therefore it gave them. Listen, I believe it gave them a little bit of an advantage. I equated a lot to Deflategate with the Patriots. Did it, could it maybe have given them an advantage? Sure. Is that the reason that they won the Super Bowl? No. Like the idea that, and especially now, like especially in the games that we've been watching the last 6 weeks, like there's no way that Michigan's getting away with the same thing they were getting away with before. So right. I think I agree. I agree. This is not the worst thing in the world. It's a crime, but it's not a murder. That's been my whole thing the whole time. This is not a disaster, and things have to be changed in college football because of this. People have been trying to do this crap forever. Michigan should get in trouble, but this is not the kind of thing where, like the Houston Astros, where we should take their World Series away because they had pretty much an unfair advantage over everybody.
Yeah.
So here's a question, Clark. Like Paul Feinbaum's already made a statement on this, that if Michigan wins the championship, he's not going to accept them as the champions. How do you feel about that? If Michigan wins the championship, are you going to say, well, no, it's not legitimate?
I guess it would depend on what else comes out about this whole thing, because I think over the next several months we're going to learn a lot more, and then maybe I'll have a better opinion.
What's going to come out that's going to make you say this is not a legitimate championship?
I don't know. I mean, the Astros, for instance, the Astros, that's not a legitimate championship to me. That's got an asterisk next to it because it's just, God, I mean, that's...
My point is just that with all the illegitimate stuff that's happened in the history of college football, like split national champions and, different things that have gone on, like I just don't see how you can single this out and go, well, that's it. I'm not going to recognize them. And, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. If they win the championship, they legitimately won the championship because, like I said, they're not stealing signs anymore. Everybody knows about it. And the other thing is TCU last year, they knew about it and they beat Michigan in that game. So this idea that, they've been getting this huge advantage, I'm sorry. Do I think it's an advantage? Yes. Do I think they're winning the Big Ten because of it? No, I'm sorry. I'm not going there. I think it's just as ridiculous as Tom Brady deflating the footballs. Like, okay, you want to say,
I guess, to be honest, how about this? What would be your line in the sand where you would go, okay, you should either take away this national championship or people should think of this as illegitimate? What would be your bar for that?
If they were all using steroids or something. We came out, they're all using HGH and nobody else is.
Okay. All right.
You've got to have such an advantage that it literally, wipes out any competition. And by the way, have you watched Michigan play?
Right.
Like the last couple of weeks? So let's talk about that next. Let's talk about the play on the field because I've been concerned about Michigan the whole season, and I basically said, don't talk to me about Michigan until November because we're not going to have any idea if they're good or not. And I'm sitting here before the Ohio State game. I think they're good. I still have no idea exactly if they're good or how good they are. So
I agree.
There's a couple of points. I mean, the Penn State game was concerning just because they decided consciously we're not going to throw the ball anymore. And I think that's two. There's two parts to that. I think number one, they knew they could just run the ball on them. Number two, the Penn State pass rush was beating them up pretty good in the first half. The other thing, and they figured out that Penn State can't do anything on offense either. So as long as we just keep doing what we're doing, they won't be able to beat us. And then you saw JJ McCarthy play pretty badly against Maryland. So it kind of gave rise to, okay, I understand why they're trying to maybe protect themselves now. But that Maryland game, it's a weird game. They're up 23-3, and they kind of took their foot off the gas. They just played Penn State. They got Ohio State next week. Like, those games happen in college football all the time. The problem is Michigan, this is the first time we've had to look at that because they haven't played anybody the whole season. Right? We were worried about Georgia in September and early October, and then they started just beating the crap out of everybody. So it all goes back to what I've said. Like, this is the biggest thing I was thinking about today is that Michigan, Ohio State, they look to me like from the teams from about 2006 to 2012, when the Big Ten team would make it to the championship game and get destroyed by the SEC. That's kind of what this looks like. And so that's what my concern is. I don't think we're in that era anymore where the SEC has just an overwhelming advantage over everybody. I think it's been mitigated because of a lot of things, transfer portal and NIL and a bunch of stuff. And I think that the talent has kind of evened out a little bit more around the country. But that's my concern. Going into this Michigan-Ohio State game, if it looks like that, and it's 17-13, and it looks like it's a really ugly game, like, I'm going to be worried about the Big Ten going into the playoff, that they might just get smacked around.
Yeah, I don't understand, okay, if you're a Michigan fan, fine, whatever. But if you're not a Michigan fan, I don't understand why you would give Michigan, like, the benefit of the doubt going into the playoff, assuming they make it to the playoff, because they haven't proven it. I mean, again, they got physically dominated by Georgia 2 years ago, and they lost to TCU last year. They should not have lost to TCU. So they haven't earned the benefit of the doubt. I mean, and look, the Big Ten is so bad, okay, outside of Michigan, Ohio State. So how, like you're saying, how the hell do we have any idea how good they are? And all this stuff about, they're physically dominating people and they're running people over in the Big Ten. Like, go do that against Georgia, okay? And maybe I'm wrong here, and this is just sort of an eye test thing. When I watch SEC games, I'm like, those guys are big. A lot of them look like they're going to be in the NFL, which they are going to be in the NFL, okay? When I watch Big Ten games, or I watch Michigan games, they feel smaller to me. And I don't know if that's where the camera is placed. I don't know what it is, but it always feels like they're smaller, And again, the history of the Big Ten teams going up against SEC teams, outside of like Ohio State, when they have a really good quarterback, there's not a good history there. Okay, so with Michigan, I don't know at this point. For people who are like, why can't Michigan be number one? They're undefeated. It's like, well, Georgia's won the national championship 2 years in a row. Like, why am I, and Michigan has not proven anything in the playoffs, so why am I supposed to give them the benefit of the doubt? They haven't played anybody either.
Yeah, also the resume for Georgia caught up to everybody. So now they've beaten Ole Miss, they beat Missouri, they beat to Tennessee. Like, they've played some pretty good teams now and laid the smack down. So that's kind of evened it out. But I think and I guess this kind of leads me into my final question about college football. I mean, I think I do think I do think Michigan will beat Ohio State. I feel that way just from watching the two teams. I just kind of feel like I think Michigan can compete with the best in the country on both lines of scrimmage. I do think Georgia has better skill position players than Michigan, and I do think that might end up making the difference. But I am fascinated by this 4-team playoff this year.
Well, I just wonder, I guess my question with Michigan would be, can they hold up for 4 quarters, right? I feel like maybe they can play well for a half, maybe 3 quarters, but I just feel like, if they're playing Georgia, they're just going to get, by the 4th quarter, I don't think they're going to be able to do, play the game they want. Like, I just wonder about Michigan. Like, it feels like they have to play one way.
Yeah, and being competitive with Georgia is one thing, and being competitive with everybody else might be something else. The way Georgia looks right now, they may just be the best team, and it might not matter.
Right.
But I really am fascinated to see. I hope Michigan gets into the playoff and gets to play somebody that's not Georgia. So we can kind of get to see what would happen in that scenario. So I was thinking about this question, and because I heard this on a podcast today, and I thought I was really interesting. I found it really interesting. So with this college football weekend, this weekend that's coming up, it's the last weekend of the regular season rivalry weekend. Would it be more? Is it more compelling if this was a 12-team playoff? Like if we have the 12-team playoff this year, would you be more interested in this weekend of college football than you normally would? Because the reason around that is that, let's say if we had a 12-team playoff this year, then the Ohio State Michigan game would basically be for seeding, right? It'd basically be to see who gets in the top 4, right? Both teams are going to get in. Right? The Alabama-Auburn game and the Georgia Tech game are completely meaningless because both teams are going to be in the conference championship game, even if they lose. So that game really doesn't, we have 5 undefeated teams and 4 one-loss teams. I mean, you can pretty much mark it down. Those 9 teams are going to be in the playoff if we had a 12-team playoff. Like this weekend would basically, the only games that would probably matter are the teams that are 10, 11, 12, Missouri, Ole Miss, Penn State, LSU. Who are they playing, and do we think they have a chance to sneak in to the playoff to get maybe the last spot? So I'll go back to that. So what do you think about that, Clark? Would you be more interested if this year was a 12-team playoff versus a 4-team playoff? Maybe it doesn't matter, but what do you think?
No, I'm not going to be more interested. I mean, you watch college football more than I do. I mean, again, I watched some of the big games and stuff, but
Right.
like, I mean, the last 2 years when it's been like the conference championship weekend, or with this like Michigan Ohio State stuff, like that's fun because that like really matters. Like if the loser, like last year it didn't matter, but usually the loser of that game, they're not going to be in the national championship conversation anymore.
Yeah, and we didn't know that it didn't matter going into it. Going into the Ohio State Michigan game last year, we didn't know they both were going to get in.
But now, and again, it's not. We've said this before, but it's not that. It's not that these games don't matter at all. I mean, if you're a Michigan fan or you're an Ohio State fan, that game still matters a lot. If you're a Texas fan or Oklahoma fan, that matters a lot. If you're an Alabama or an Auburn fan, or I don't know, FSU and Miami, like that rivalry still matters, and you're still going to want to go out there and beat that other team. I mean, like we're Dolphins fans, like we don't like losing to the Jets. Like that's fucking annoying. Like if we can go out there and beat the Patriots, you feel good. If we can go out there and beat the Bills, that's even greater. So it's not that it doesn't matter, but it's not going to matter as much. And if you're asking me if I give that much of a shit about the 10th, 11th, 12th team getting into the playoff, I really don't care. Like, at that point, I'm just like, get me to the playoff and let me watch the playoff games. Like,
so on the Cover 3 podcast, which is where I got this question, one of the hosts was saying that it didn't. The lie that's being told to us is that we need to get a 12-team playoff so more games matter at the end of the season. And his argument was, well, that's not true. It's not more games matter. There's just different games that matter, and those games that matter we don't care about. Like nobody cares about Missouri and Arkansas this weekend or Penn State and Michigan State. No one's going to watch those games. Now, excluding fans of those teams, right?
Yeah.
Fans of those teams, they're invested. That doesn't matter. Like they're going to be interested anyway. But I was thinking about this from my perspective, Clark. Would it be more compelling to me if this were a 12-team playoff? It's still compelling, right? Michigan, Ohio State is still really interesting because of how much they hate each other and because of the historical rivalry. Auburn, Alabama is still interesting, even though Auburn isn't good this year. It's still compelling, right? Would it be more compelling if this were a 12-team playoff? Probably not. Like it would either be the same or less. Like I'll still, and I'm just thinking about this for me, right? Just in terms of me, I'm still going to watch just the same games that I normally would. right? It doesn't change anything for me. I'm still going to watch Ohio State, Michigan. I'm still going to watch Alabama against Auburn. I'm still going to watch. This year. I'm going to watch Florida, Florida State, because those are the games where the teams there's interest in it because those teams might make the playoff. So I'm still going to watch. Might I check in on a couple more games? If there's more teams that matter, I guess. But I don't think it's necessarily better. The 12-team playoff is necessarily better, right? We get more games, so that's good. I'm for more games because we don't have enough games in college football. That's one of the major problems. People complaining, they'll play too many games then. I completely disagree. The NFL plays 17 games, then they play 5 weeks of playoffs. So I don't think this is too many games, no matter what we do. I like the idea of the 12-team playoff. And we've talked about this before. Is it going to eliminate some of the regular season? Yes. It's going to have an effect on the regular season, and the regular season won't matter quite as much. Now, does that matter in the grand scheme of us watching sports? Probably not. We're probably going to watch the same games that we would watch anyway, whether there's a 12-team playoff or a 14 playoff, right?
Yeah, I think for the most part. Yeah, the only thing I would add is so for instance, next year, if Ohio State's playing Michigan and we both think they're probably going to be in.
Right.
Okay. Unless the players are resting or something, but I don't think they're going to do that. Even though I know there's been players resting for bowl games, and that's become a bigger deal in recent years.
Right.
I don't think you're going to get that in rivalry games. So if you're telling me that again, the game doesn't necessarily mean that if you lose, you're out of the playoff, but it means a lot to the players who are on the field, and it means a lot to the coaches and the schools, then it's going to be compelling, right? So you won't lose that. It's just that other stuff about national championship implications, gets kind of lost with some of these things.
Yeah, I think, look, the conference championship thing will still hold a lot of water because you have a chance to get a bye,
Right.
to get the week off or whatever, which I don't think that's going to last very long. I think we're going to be going to 16 in the next 4 or 5 years at some point. So I still think there's value in it. Reese Davis was making this point on the College Game Day podcast. He was basically saying that, that he's been one of the first proponents of, listen, the regular season's going to change. It's not going to be the same as it was if you're going to go to a 12-team playoff. It's not a bad thing. It's just going to be different. And one of the things he was saying was, well, if we're going to go to this, then we need to especially if we're going to go to 16-team playoff, we need to do away with the conference championship games. And his argument was, because we're doing away with divisions in conferences. So if this were the 12-team playoff, right? If this were next year, if Ohio State was playing Michigan, they're both undefeated, right? They played this week. They would just play each other again in the conference championship game, and then they're both going to get into the playoff. So they might just play each other again in the playoff. So we could have a team in a little over a month, we could have a team play each other 3 times. And so that was his argument for figure out a way to make up the money somewhere else and just do away with conference championship games. I disagree with that because the reason that that's an issue is because the Big Ten is terrible. Okay? That's not going to happen in every other conference. He's picking the one outlier where that might happen. And hopefully bringing USC and Oregon and UCLA and Washington into the Big Ten will solve that. Hopefully the Big Ten Ohio State game won't be the de facto conference championship game like it has been the past I don't know how many years. Hopefully that won't be a problem anymore. But that is a problem. That is an issue. Those kinds of things can kind of ruin it. If you just get the same 2 teams playing each other, well, one's going to be a home game for somebody, then they'll play on the neutral site, then they'll play again in the playoff in a bowl game. Then we're starting to lose something. But I think that is, in my opinion, that is an outlier that hopefully the circumstances will take care of that.
Well, I think it's more important to just get better games during the regular season, but I don't know if that's really going to happen. Now that there's a 12-team playoff, you have a bigger margin for error. So you would imagine, okay, well, let's play more games during the regular season. But, I don't know. College football seems to kind of take a while to to make changes or to address, problems. So I
And
don't have, I'm not putting the
you
hope
brought up a good point though about resting players in the conference championship games. Like unless that starts to happen, where teams are like, "Oh, we're both in the playoff. Who cares? Let's just both play our reserves for the conference championship game." If that happens, then they'll be the earth will move, mountains will move if that happens. But I don't think we're in that situation at this point. But that's a legitimate concern. Like I did like that he brought that up, and I thought that was very well done. That college football doesn't change things unless it just becomes embarrassing, right? So
Yeah.
unless an embarrassing situation comes up, the other thing is, so the rankings are coming out tonight. But what do you think the committee should do about Florida State? Because Jordan Travis got hurt; it was a bad leg injury, and he's out for the season. How do you think, and should that affect what happens going forward?
So God, so there. What do we got? We got 1 week regular season, and then it would be the ACC championship game.
Correct.
So I mean, this is difficult because it's like if say they went out and it's like okay, well they've gone undefeated. They're in the ACC. That's a Power Five conference. How can you leave them out? You know. Um, but then I guess it becomes a question of like if say Washington's there and they're undefeated, right? Then it's like okay, well, but do you have to put Washington in at the expense of Florida State, or how does because I mean I guess we're assuming that it's going to be Georgia, the winner of Ohio State, Michigan. That's two, and then who else are we thinking of? I mean, obviously Florida State, Washington.
Yeah, so in that scenario, right, the doomsday scenario is obviously like Alabama beats Georgia, Oregon beats Washington, and we've just got this massive chaos. That's obviously an issue. Ohio State, Michigan play this really tight game that ends on a field goal. Like that could be crazy. But let's in your scenario, let's say Georgia wins out, let's say Michigan wins out, wins the Big Ten, Florida State's undefeated, Washington's undefeated, right? I would
There's
feel
your four.
Right, there's your four. I would feel bad for Texas in that instance because, look, I understand like what Florida State's done this year. I get it. Their resume is basically hanging on that floor of the LSU game that they won at the beginning of the season. I get it where Florida State's coming from, and if they win both these games, they probably deserve to be in. But I feel bad because Florida State is not one of the four best teams. Like everybody can get upset about that and talk to me about resume, but they're not. Without Jordan Travis, they're not one of the four best teams.
Well,
so
Cincinnati got in, and they weren't one of the four best teams. So
right, but they were undefeated, and they didn't lose their quarterback 3 weeks before the.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah,
So that's my issue. I would feel bad for Texas if Texas got left out in that scenario. They're 12-1, and Florida State is now. Look. I think Florida State goes undefeated. I think they're going to
get a rematch against Oklahoma.
Probably not. That's still up in the air. It could be Oklahoma State. It could be Kansas State. Oh. That's still up in the air to this week to see who they play in the Big 12 title game. But I think I feel like I said now. You got Danny Cannell out here saying if Florida State goes undefeated, there is 0% chance they're getting left out of the playoff. I disagree with that. Yeah, there isn't a 0% chance of anything. There isn't a 100% chance of anything. This is why the committee exists, to figure this stuff out. This is why we have the committee. Now, do I think Florida State, do I think it's like 98% chance they get in if they win out? Yeah, I do. I think more than likely they're going to get in unless some crazy scenario happens, which this is college football. You never know. But I think it's hard though. It's difficult this is a difficult one because, there's no way, like we've all seen them play. And I know it's going to depend on how they play these next 2 weeks. They have to play at the Florida Gators in Gainesville, who they lost their quarterback last week. So that should be interesting. Right. And then they've got to play Louisville in the ACC championship game. And Louisville's pretty good. Right. So this won't be easy for them, but I have a feeling if they win out, they're going to be fine. But
yeah, I kind of feel like if they went out, yeah, they're getting in. If they lose, I think they're out.
Oh yeah, they lose, they're out.
Yeah, if they say I mean, if they beat Louisville, they're a decent team. So okay, fine. I think that's probably enough. Yeah, this is Yeah, somebody again. This is why I like the 4-team playoff, because you get into these things where you got to exclude somebody, so somebody gets pissed off, and then it creates all this drama, which is part of the appeal of college football. But
Yeah, I would agree. I think that but it's again it's difficult because I think if Florida State gets in with their backup quarterback, they're just going to get beat by whoever they play. So it's kind of
yeah,
disappointing. It's like, but it's not the committee's job to set
they
up the
well
playoff with the best
they
games.
may have lost anyway, even if they had Jordan Travis, because it's not like
Right.
Florida State's been super impressive.
Right, but they'd at least have a shot. You know,
Right.
I feel like with this, like they're just the sacrificial lamb at this point. And if they get in as the 4 seed and Georgia's undefeated, well, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, whoever played Georgia first would probably get beat anyway. So this may not be as much of a disaster as I'm making it out to be, but it just so this is going to be really interesting the next couple of weeks. Anyway, all right, that's all the that's our college football talk for today. I'm really looking forward to this weekend, though. I'm really excited. I think that this Michigan Ohio State game should be really fascinating as to see what's going to get happen, and then what's going to happen, and then we'll see if one of these other teams blows it in their rivalry game.
Yeah, should be fun.
So, all right. So NFL, where do you want to go first? Do you want to talk about the Eagles Chiefs game first?
Well, I would just, I guess I'll just pose the question: what's wrong? What's wrong with the Chiefs?
Listen, the Chiefs have they got problems at receiver. You know, their offense looks pretty weak at this point. If you slow down Kelsey, they don't have much. You know, like you said to me earlier, they've scored 5 points a game in the second half this year. They got shut out the last 2 weeks in a row in the second half.
3 weeks.
So 3 weeks. They've got they've got serious problems and that they have to deal with. Now, does that mean they can't fix it and can't get it right before the playoffs? Sure they can. You know, they've probably got their division, you know, although the Broncos are making a nice run here.
Yeah.
They still have a 2-game lead in their division. And so we'll see what happens. But yeah, this is more than just, oh, they'll figure it out and oh, it's early season stuff. We're almost at Thanksgiving. And
Yeah.
they can't figure out how to score in the second half. So this is a serious problem. Like to pretend it's not a serious problem would be disingenuous. Like this is a serious issue that's going to come into play in the playoffs. Now, granted, I look at the rest of the teams and I see lots of flaws everywhere, but this is a legitimate concern for the Chiefs. I don't know how you can't win in the playoffs if you can't score in the second half. Like that's
Well, I
just
mean, just look at let's go through their games here where they haven't scored more than 25 points. So the first game they scored 20. Second game they scored 17. They played the Jets. They only scored 23. They played Minnesota. They scored 27. Against Denver, they only scored 19 the first time. They scored 20. They scored 9 against Denver the second time. They only scored 14 points on offense against the Dolphins, and then this week they only scored 17 points. So it's not like, this is just, oh, you guys are overreacting. These are some of the stats about their offense are extremely concerning, okay? The points, points they're averaging in the second half, the yards they're getting in the second half, the yards per play in the second half, the total scoring that they have, the number of drops. They got 26 drops. That leads the league. They had 5 drops in the game last night. So, it's and then you look at Mahomes' stat line from last night. He threw 45 passes or something like that. He only threw for 177 yards. The stats about their offense are alarming. And like you said, we're getting close to Thanksgiving. It's like, and again, the funny thing though is you look at, like you were saying today, you look at the AFC. Okay, who do you trust to beat them? And I don't know. I think the main thing with the Chiefs though is I think their margin for error. People need to understand this going into the playoffs. Their margin for error has shrunk. Okay, no more of this playing from behind every game in the playoffs. You can't do that anymore. They don't have the explosive ability to come back. So they're going to have to win ugly, like the Eagles win ugly. Like that's what their formula is going to have to be. The Chiefs' defense is actually really good. But that's going to have to be the formula, because I don't see how you're going to turn this around, because by the second half, every team realizes, okay, double team Travis Kelce, sometimes triple team him, and make these other guys beat us because we don't think they can. And usually they can't.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a serious issue. This is not a joke about. I think, and the other thing was like, why didn't they? I feel like they could have kept running the ball. I feel like because I felt like they were running the ball pretty well, and it's like to me,
Yeah.
it's like you got to change at some point. Andy Reid's got to change philosophy and go, all right, I'm going to run the ball. So I guess that's it. I guess I've stumbled onto it right there. Is Andy Reid going to be patient and run the football? Because that's what this team needs to do, and Andy Reid's never been that guy.
Yeah.
That's not what Andy Reid does. He is, I'm going to throw the ball 70% of the time. That's how he rolls. So let's see what happens here in the next month. Like, are the Chiefs going to go, all right, now, granted, if you look at the Chiefs schedule, it's barbecue chicken. I mean, it's,
The rest of the
it's
schedule.
give me a break. I mean, they do have to play. They do have to play. It's like and earlier it didn't look. It looked kind of okay. They got to play Buffalo and they got to play Cincinnati. But with Joe Burrow out for the year, now it's like okay, that's not that tough of a game. So yeah, I just. But as you and I both know, defenses end up kind of falling apart if you're leaning on them the whole season. Defenses can't carry you through the same way that they used to be able to. Guys get injured, things happen. You can't expect your defense to stop everybody for the whole season.
Well, and I was just thinking about this today, like, I don't want to overreact, but I mean, I do think the Chiefs really do need to get the number one seed. And granted, they should. I mean, you look at the rest of their schedule, but I think it's imperative that you do not have to go play a road playoff game, and you only have to play 2 games to get to the Super Bowl because I don't think you're going to want to have to deal with it like having to play 3 games to get to the Super Bowl, at least one of those games being on the road. That would not be good. And then I'm looking at the other teams in the AFC, like, obviously the Cleveland Browns have problems on offense. Even with Deshaun Watson, they have problems on offense. But their defense is no joke. So,
yep.
If, for instance, if the Chiefs are playing the Browns, I don't care if it's at Arrowhead. Like, to me, that's going to be a grinded out game. And granted, the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, so of course you pick them, but I mean, that could be a really tough game. And then I'm looking at like the Ravens. I understand they lost their tight end, and we'll see if Lamar Jackson can finish the season healthy, which he hasn't been able to do the last 2 years. But I kind of like the Ravens' chances against the Chiefs. If you're telling me it's going to be a grinded out game, and the Ravens are just going to try to play physical and run the ball with Lamar Jackson, and maybe Lamar can make some plays with Zay Flowers or Odell Beckham Jr. Like, I think I really like my chances. Again, I'm not saying that the Chiefs can't get to the Super Bowl. I totally think they can. But I think like I said, for Baltimore, this may be a really good opportunity if you can hold it together and stay healthy the rest of the year. Beyond that, I don't like even Buffalo. Like, hey, Josh Allen can run with the ball. That can be a problem for for defenses.
Yeah. So let's talk about Buffalo for a second. I think that it's gone too far on people hating on the Buffalo Bills. Now, granted, I've been defending the Buffalo Bills the whole time since last season when everybody's like, oh, they're really not that good, blah, blah, blah. Well, let me just this is my explanation. This is what's happened to the Buffalo Bills, okay? Their offense is obviously having a hard time. They're trying to figure out what the hell they are. They fired the offensive coordinator. They obviously they've got some identity problems. We've been talking about this today. They've got some identity problems on offense, okay? But their main problem on offense is they keep turning the ball over. And stupidly, Josh Allen just throwing the ball to the other team. We saw what happened against the Jets the other day. Now, granted, it's the Jets. I'm not saying the Jets are awesome. But what happens when they don't turn the ball over? Buffalo does just fine on offense. Like it's not the kind of thing the Chiefs are going through. Where it's like, oh my God, we don't have anybody who can make a play. Buffalo has guys that can make plays on offense. Are they super duper talented? No. They don't have the most talented team in the league. No. But they have good enough talent on offense that they're just fine if they don't turn the ball over. What's happened to Buffalo is they've got so many injuries on defense that now it's reached a breaking point to where they can't make any mistakes. Buffalo they cannot turn the ball over. They can't be stupid. They can't make dumb plays. They have got to be smart and efficient. And that's not always Josh Allen's strong suit. So, but it's a simple, it's not a simple fix, but it is a fix. If Buffalo just lessens their turnovers a little bit, they'll be fine and they'll be a playoff team. Like they're good enough everywhere else that if they just can eliminate that part where they're messing up these games by just throwing the ball to the other team for no reason, then I still think Buffalo can be dangerous. I don't think Buffalo can win multiple playoff games because their team is just too beat up. I don't think they can go far, whatever. But as a Dolphins fan, I don't want Buffalo coming to Miami to play us. I don't want to see Josh Allen, as we used to call him, the Sasquatch. I don't want to see the Sasquatch because that guy is capable of just beating you by himself.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I do think that I think the AFC playoffs are going to be interesting because the Chiefs. I think Colin Cowherd really put it really well. He's like, the Chiefs don't have like a third and fourth gear on offense. They don't have it anymore. So they got to win kind of ugly, and they got to grind it out, and they got to play smart and not, be careful about making mistakes, which they can do. Andy Reid's a great coach. Mahomes has won 2 Super Bowls. He's got 2 MVPs. Like, we get it. But I think, some of these other teams, you got to be looking at it like, okay, if we're playing the Chiefs, granted, we don't have a huge margin for error, but they don't have a huge margin for error. So it could be 1 or 2 little things, and you could beat them, even in Arrowhead. So this is kind of interesting. Now, as a Dolphins fan, do I think the Dolphins could go to Arrowhead and beat the Chiefs? No, I don't. I mean, they just, I don't know. I don't know.
I'll put it this way. I'm not going into that game expecting the Dolphins to win.
Yeah.
But do I think they can compete with the Chiefs? They already showed they can compete with the Chiefs.
That's true. Yeah.
They already showed they know how to be competitive with them. So I'm not like going, oh my God, it's impossible. Right.
Right.
But leading into that, so let's talk about the Dolphins. Look, the Dolphins are in a really nice position here. Okay. They've reached the easy part of their schedule and they're in first place in their division. And right now they're tied for the 1 seed in the conference.
Yep.
Okay. They have 4 games, and the quarterbacks we have to play are Tim Boyle, Sam Howell, Will Levis, and whoever the Jets decide to start a month from now. Okay, whether it's still Tim Boyle or some other Trevor Siemian
or whatever. Yeah.
Who knows? Okay, those are the 4 quarterbacks we have the next 4 weeks. So the door is wide open, Dolphins.
Can I just point something out just really quick about the Jets' backup quarterbacks? I feel like I'm hearing some people today, well, anything's better than Zach Wilson. Well, what does it say if he was behind? That guy was behind Zach Wilson on the depth chart. Jesus.
Yeah, we told you. By the way, everyone on the planet with a brain told you, Jets fans, the season was over in week 1 when Aaron Rodgers got injured. Yeah. The season was over, but instead, you're like, no, we got to make something out of this. We can't have a lost season. And, this is where a major market team with like big media, you ruin it because now you were going to keep your first round pick, right? So you want to lose games. These people acting like they need to win games. No, you don't. That's not what you want. You want to rest Garrett Wilson, take Sauce Gardner out. You want to relax, take it easy, and stop trying to fire the coach every goddamn week and stop blaming the quarterback. Yeah, Zach Wilson's not good. You knew that going in. Anyway, I don't want to talk too much about the Jets, but listen, yeah. I just want to say, Miami Dolphins, like, don't fuck this up. You tried like hell to screw it up on Sunday. I don't know what the hell that Raiders game was. Turning the ball over like idiots, just dumbass fumbles, dumbass interceptions. Thank God the defense is playing well, Clark. That is the one bright spot I can say. The defense has come around. Like, We've got something. Jalen Ramsey had 2 picks. Like, I was one of those, like, yeah, Jalen Ramsey's not going to make a huge difference. It's nice, but it's not going to make a huge difference. And he has made a difference. He's been really good. Like, he's been what Xavier Howard used to be. So,
yeah, I think one of the concern, the defense has definitely been better. It's definitely come around, which is good. I feel like, though, my problem with the Dolphins is, okay, we've established that they don't beat good teams, right? But I feel like when they play bad teams, they play down to their competition. I mean, I didn't have the Dolphins game on like a separate screen. I was just watching Red Zone, and it kept coming back to the game, and I'm like, why is this still a game? Why are you guys? They're playing with their food, like they're fucking. It's like, what are you guys doing? Put this team away. And they keep they're getting stupid turnovers and stuff. They have got to, like, look, if they button up some of that stuff, you know, they're going to beat bad teams easily. And if you button that stuff up against, you know, better teams, you can probably compete. I'm not necessarily saying you're going to win, but yeah, that's really concerning. I mean, a lot of the turnovers just, yeah.
Well, and the thing is, like, they
Fumbles and
had,
throwing the picks and all that stuff.
well, just looking at the game, right? They had 3 turnovers, right? That's 3 possessions where they just basically gave, they could have, they, you know, they didn't end in points because you gave the ball away. They missed a field goal, so that's 4, right? And then they had a God, I can't remember what was the last one. There were 5. There were 5 possessions that they basically just gave away. And
Yeah.
the Dolphins, like, if the Dolphins don't get, if you watch the game and look at the yards they put up, the Dolphins have no problem moving the ball. They can move the ball on every single drive as long as they don't screw themselves over. So that's going to be what we're going to be looking at the next 4 games. Because if the Dolphins can, this is whatever, maybe I'm going too far, but if the Dolphins can win the next 4 games, they probably win the division. Like, that probably does it. That probably takes care of it because Buffalo's got to play Philadelphia and Kansas City coming up. So, you know, it's on you. It's on you, Dolphins. Like, figure this shit out. This isn't that hard. You're not playing good teams, but you are playing teams that if you screw around, they can beat you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like, and I've said this before, but I mean, Dolphins fans, I think you better lock in and really try to enjoy this. This may be the best Dolphins season that we've had in quite a while. I mean, because if they win the division, they get a home playoff game. That hasn't happened since like 2009.
No, 16. Well, no, didn't they? Did Tannehill take them to the playoffs? Was that on the road?
Was it?
I can't remember.
I don't
We played the
remember.
Steelers. I think that was here. But anyway,
Okay. Well,
regardless,
it's
only
we didn't
it's
have
only
the
happened
and,
a couple of times in the last 25 years.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. It just doesn't happen. So, yeah, and I mean, of course, the problem is then I think about it, like, if say the Dolphins are like the 2 seed, okay, if they're the 2 seed, then they're playing the whoever the 7th ranked team is, and it's like, okay, what if it's like the Broncos? Okay, you know, what if it's the Steelers? Okay, I mean, I don't like the fact that the Steelers, I don't like playing their defense, but they can't score. Cleveland, they can't really score, but I don't know that I really want to play their defense. So it's kind of like, so if the Dolphins win the division, celebrate, because I don't know if it's going to get better than that. Maybe I'm being too negative, but I just, managing expectations.
Listen, now that's the positive side. The negative side is there's 61 different quarterbacks have thrown a pass this season, and so half the league doesn't have a quarterback, and I'm supposed to believe Tua is not going to get injured in the next 6 weeks. Like, I'm holding my breath every week, Clark. Holding my breath every week that he's managed to stay healthy. So far, they've done a great job managing him. He hasn't really been hit that hard this season. There hasn't been a lot of games where it's been, whatever. But we also haven't.
Yeah, fingers crossed that this is the outlier year. Okay, because a lot of times there'll be a guy who just gets hurt all the time, but then there's that one, like, you're looking through his stats of his career, and then there's that one year where he played all the games, and you're like, wow, that's like weird. That's like this, it's a sore thumb. It just sticks right out. You're like, holy shit, maybe this is the year that he pulls that off. I don't want to speak too soon, but
Yeah. So, because this would be rough. Although, looking at the schedule, if he was going to get hurt, next week would be a good time to do it, because we're playing actual teams that we can beat. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, I'm a positive guy on the Dolphins right now. Like, I feel pretty good about where they're at. There are a bunch of things I'd like to see them do better, but I think this season has gone pretty well so far.
Yeah, I mean,
all right. Yeah. Other NFL topics. I mean, I don't have anything to really say about this, but I'm sad that Joe Burrow got injured and he's out for the year.
That sucks.
That basically, but I think like looking at the standings, like, I think that takes the Bengals are out. To me, they're done. I'm not worried about them. I know the Browns are still in the playoff hunt, but and not having a quarterback will catch up with you.
I still think they could make the playoffs just because they're in such good position right now. But as far as them doing anything, I don't know. But I mean, their defense is really good. Miles, I've heard people talk about it. I think Myles Garrett maybe should win the MVP. I mean, like, he's unbelievable.
Yeah, their defense is scary good.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh's is scary good. But I don't know. I'm not really buying like these teams without quarterbacks. I just don't buy them down the stretch of an NFL season because I've seen it too many times. Eventually, starting Dorian Thompson-Robinson will catch up with you.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I think about that. What do you think about? Well, all this stuff came out about Bill Belichick changing teams, and oh geez, and Dan Orlovsky said he's heard that he was going to change teams, and he already knows what team it is, but he wasn't going to say on the Pat McAfee show. I think we were talking about this, I think a while, this week or last week that, yeah, I just think this is absolute nonsense. Like Belichick going to another team. Like, let me get this straight. I'm going to bring in the guy that's proven he can't draft worth a damn. Like he obviously can't draft good players. We've seen it. Doesn't know what the hell to do with quarterbacks. Okay. Like, so I'm going to bring in Belichick to run my team. Why? Like all Belichick's going to do is bring in all his own guys. He's not going to hire anybody from outside of the guys that he knows in his little, bunker or whatever. And that's going to be it. So I don't understand the wide interest. I know Belichick's one of the greatest coaches ever. I'm not disputing that. But right now, this is not a guy that should be a hot coaching item. Like if I'm the Patriots and you want to give me a 3rd round pick for Bill Belichick, I'll take it. Sign me up. I'll do it right now. No problem. Like, go ahead. You take Belichick. When he doesn't have the Patriots organization behind him, I think this is just a complete pile of crap that he's going to go someplace else. Because, look, Belichick has a losing record without Brady. Like, I'm not saying that Brady is everything. But what I am saying is the run's over. Like, it's over. It's done. I'm not sure what the idea that Belichick's going to go to another team and recreate this is just, I think it's absolute nonsense. Not taking anything away from everything he's done in the past, but I don't see the value in Bill Belichick running my team.
Well, I mean, professional sports teams do a lot of dumb stuff. So I'm never really, to be honest, I can't really be surprised by anything. But like you, I don't get it. I mean, because I just, again, like, people seem to think that all that's wrong with the Patriots is they picked the wrong quarterback. And no, they've had issues going back to Brady. Okay. The only reason they could run the team the way they did was because they had Tom Brady, who's, right now considered the greatest quarterback of all time. So, yeah, and again, like, yeah, if you want to trade picks for Belichick, like, okay, I don't think he's going to leave. I feel like the Patriots are just going to hang on for way too long. Because they're just like, oh, he's the greatest coach ever, and it's just like, which seems very, I don't know, Boston to me, that they're just going to hang on to this and whatever. But it seems like a waste of time. It's like, guys, you need to like modernize and get with the way the NFL is now. You need to focus more on the draft.
Yeah, the Boston thing to do is to hang on to him for way too long and then tell all kinds of, make up all kinds of rumors and bash the guy on his way out the door. That's how Boston does things. Anybody who leaves Boston gets ripped apart on the way out. All the hit pieces come out after that. The media comes out with their claws, and it turns into a big mess. So that's Boston for you. So let's talk about Russell Wilson for a second. Listen,
he's amazing, isn't he? He looks like an elite quarterback again, doesn't he? I mean, God, he, like you said, nobody throws a 4-yard pass to a running back like Russell Wilson.
Well, and I need to correct that. Nobody holds onto the ball too long, moves around a little bit, and then throws a 4-yard pass to a running back like Russell Wilson. Nobody on the planet ever. Look, I applaud what Denver has done. They were 1-5, and to get themselves back to 5-5, like that is a hell of a job coaching and a good job of getting it all together. I mean, they looked like, we saw it. The Dolphins scored 70 points on them, and I thought the defense on this team would be good. Like I thought that would be the thing they could hang their hat on, and now it is like the last two or 3 weeks. It's finally starting to look like the defense that I thought it was going to be. But man, it looked awful, the first month of the season. So I completely applaud Denver. They're managing their team correctly. Sean Payton is doing whatever he has to do to get this team to win games, and I think he's figured out, okay, with this team, this is how we have to do it. These games are going to be tight. We got to grind these games out. We got to keep them close. Keep them close to the vest, not make stupid mistakes, and this is what we got to do to win. That being said, if Buffalo doesn't have 12 men on the field, they lose last week. right? If Minnesota wasn't starting a backup quarterback, they would have lost the other day on Sunday night to Minnesota. So we'd be talking about a 3-7 team, and we'd all be going, "What's wrong with them?" So I just find it funny that a couple of things go differently, and Sean Payton goes from genius to dumbass in like a game or two, and that's the part that just doesn't make any sense to me. And this idea that Russell Wilson's playing well, Russell Wilson is fine. He is perfectly average. Okay. But this idea that Russell Wilson's been great is just nonsense. And these people saying, well, he's 80 or 90% of what he was. No, he's not. Full on 100% Russell Wilson was an MVP candidate every year. Okay. That's not anywhere close to what this is. And my way of making this argument, this is how I make this stick. If Tua was playing that way, what would people be saying? They'd be ripping him apart if you were playing like this. When Kirk Cousins or Dak Prescott plays like this, everybody's like, oh, what the hell's wrong with him? See, you can't win with this guy. So I don't understand. How do we turn this into Russell Wilson plays like an average quarterback and we're like, oh, man, this is amazing. This is great. So yeah. How is he getting that benefit of the doubt when Russell Wilson, nobody in sports was getting ripped apart more than Russell Wilson last year? His teammates were ripping him. What the hell happened, Clark?
I don't know. Well, Nick Wright put it really well today. He was basically saying, you can tell by the plays that they call that they're protecting Russell Wilson. Like, they don't want him to throw a bunch because they don't want him to get, and basically what you're seeing with him is that, he's checking stuff down. Maybe a couple times during the game, he'll throw something deep, and his deep ball looks fine. It kind of looks like the old Russell Wilson deep ball, And then maybe a few times a game, he makes a pretty good play where he's running around and he throws on the move, like he made that touchdown pass. That's really it, though. They're not scoring a bunch of points. They kicked a bunch of field goals against Minnesota. So I don't, the idea that he's like back, it's like, no, he's not back. He was awful last year, and now he's okay, competent. You can find a way to play with him where you can keep the team in the game. Okay, that's miles apart from he's back to MVP candidate, tossing deep balls all around the yard and making all kinds of, insane plays where you just watch and go, wow, that's amazing. He's not back there. I don't know that he's going to get back there. And don't come at me with the passer rating argument, okay? Tua was the highest rated passer in the league last year. And I watched him play. There were some games where he really didn't look that good. So I don't want to hear about, passer rating being the end-all, be-all of, how good a quarterback is. I thought we already established years ago that's a flawed stat, but maybe that's just me.
Yeah. All right. Any other NFL thoughts?
The only other thing, I guess, was just what do you make of the Eagles? They're 9-1 now, so they beat the Chiefs. What do we think about them?
I think they're tough. Both lines of scrimmage, they're awesome. I mean, now granted, the Chiefs' defensive line did a number on their offensive line, especially in the first half. So I wonder what that means if they have to play San Francisco for Philly's offensive line. Like that does kind of concern me. But overall, I think Philadelphia, they beat you up on the line of scrimmage, and over 60 minutes, it's like a boa constrictor. They just squeeze the life out of you, and there's nothing left when you get to the fourth quarter. And that's what happens in most of these games. And Jalen Hurts, he makes enough plays to beat you. Like, he runs the ball well enough. He completes he always completes a deep ball or two in the game that kills you, right? They managed to keep A.J. Brown down last night, but that didn't matter. He still made the big play to Devontae Smith when he had to. So I think Philadelphia is really good. If it's 3rd and 1, they're getting the first down. Like there's no question about it. And so I think they've got this toughness advantage that I don't know that anybody else has. And it all goes together. Jalen Hurts fits exactly what they do. He makes the plays that have to be made. It's not gorgeous. He's not out there playing like Joe Burrow or Josh Allen or whatever. But I got to hand it to him. The guy makes plays. And especially the difference between Jalen Hurts and a lot of other quarterbacks is Jalen Hurts makes the plays when you need it. When I need it on 3rd down, he gets it done, right? Sometimes he can look kind of bad in the first half. Sometimes it's kind of, whatever. but I would trade like what Tua does, where Tua makes a bunch of plays in the first quarter that don't mean anything. I would trade what Tua does for what Jalen Hurts does every day of the week. Because when I need it, I know who's getting it. He's my guy. I believe in him. So they're going to be now. Their schedule is a nightmare going down the stretch here. So we'll see what happens because they got they had the easy schedule last year and they got just a brutal schedule this year. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see if they can hold this together and if guys get injured and all that kind of stuff because it's hard to play this way every single week like they do. But I think they have a formula that works, and it's going to be tough to beat them. And I don't care. Everybody's like, oh, but the games are all close. The teams are right there. It's like, yeah, but that's kind of the way Philadelphia plays. Every game's like that.
I kind of feel that like the playoffs, I mean, like, that's kind of how I feel the playoffs are going to go, like in both conferences, really. I mean, some of the matchups might be blowouts, but I think for the most part, like, I mean, Dallas played Philadelphia, and it was really close. Like, and they play them one more time during the regular season. If they end up meeting in the playoffs, like, I think it'll probably still be a close game. I mean, barring, injury or whatever. And then if San Francisco has to play Philadelphia, I mean, I don't know what the hell's going to go on. That's going to be a rock fight. I don't know what's going to go on there. So, I mean, Philadelphia is really, you're 9-1. They're positioned to be the number one seed, and you only have to play 2 games to make it to the Super Bowl. So.
Well, yeah, getting the 1 seed, that might be, I mean, Detroit is 1 game behind them, and Detroit's schedule is far easier. So it might be Detroit, but if I'm Philadelphia, I'm not worried about Detroit.
That's the thing. Like when I look at the NFC, I'm like, it's got to be San Francisco or the Eagles because the Lions, look, they're having a great year. Awesome for them, and I think it's really cool. And maybe they can have a run here where they can be good for a few years. But come on, they haven't. Do you trust them in the playoffs? Like, there's no reason to trust them in the playoffs. The 49ers, we've seen them do it.
I think Detroit's defense has improved from if they were terrible last year to they're serviceable this year. I think they need another draft. They need another draft of defensive players to get it to where their defense is good enough to where they can beat some of these teams. Their offense is. We don't have to worry about that. But when their offense played Baltimore, they got wiped out. So it's tough when you play, and that's one of the things I watch when I watch the Eagles. Their defensive line is it's a nightmare. It's like a hurricane coming at you. I don't know how you control them for 60 minutes. I just don't know how you do it. So, but yeah, every game for Philadelphia is going to look like that. They're just a grind it out type of team, and that's what they do.
Yep. Yeah, that's all I had.
Okay, so before we get out of here, I wanted to do one NBA topic that I thought this was really fascinating. So Doc Rivers went on to the Bill Simmons podcast, and I guess they're going to do that a few times, throughout the season. They're going to talk to him on the podcast, which is awesome because being a coach that was just in the league, he has a lot of insight into what goes on. And he basically, they started talking about what happened in Philadelphia and what's going on with James Harden, and I thought it was very telling to me that Doc Rivers had no problem saying, listen, I was telling the front office, like, I'd rather, for when we trade Ben Simmons, like, can we just get role players? Like, if I could just get, like, 2 really good, like, role players, like, that would be everything I need. I mean, he's saying this on the podcast where he just coached, James Harden, and he's like, yeah, without saying the words, he was basically saying, yeah, I didn't want him. I didn't think he was going to be good for our team. And he's right. He's like, we wanted to play faster. We couldn't play faster because James Harden would just go get the ball and then walk up the court. He's like, so I couldn't do anything about that. Whenever James Harden was out, right, he could just let Tyrese Maxey do his thing. And you're seeing it this year where Tyrese Maxey has upped his game and looks like an all-star. So, I just thought that was fascinating. And then he's talking about how the players, he's talking to Tobias Harris. Doc Rivers was talking to Tobias Harris because he was doing one of their games. He was broadcasting one of their games. And basically Tobias Harris is like, oh man, I feel free this year. I feel great. Everything's easier. Everything's, so it just made me go, you see, like all this stuff. And then you watch what they talked about the Clippers. You watch what the Clippers are doing. And it's like, the Clippers is a mess. They traded away. The one thing the Clippers had going for them was the depth where they could switch and they could play small, right? That was their advantage. That's how they were beating teams, right? But they can't do that anymore because they traded Batum and Covington and whatever to Philadelphia. So now they've got James Harden and Russell Westbrook, who both need the ball to be successful, right? They're one-on-one. They can't do anything without the ball, right? Whenever they don't have the ball, all they do is stand there. so they're not providing anything to the offense, right? Kawhi Leonard is basically a one-on-one player. He doesn't really play like a system. It's basically get me the ball, right? So I just think there's no chance of that working. Like they're 5-7 right now, and it's like I don't understand how you guys can think what's going to happen is the Clippers are going to have to trade Westbrook because he had a nice role there, but he can't do that anymore with Harden there. So I have no idea how that's going to work. And look at Philadelphia, like, and it just blows my mind. Like everybody, I just don't understand why not enough. It isn't talked about enough how Philadelphia completely messed this up. If they'd have made the Ben Simmons trade the way they should have, right, and gotten a guy like the rumor was out there, they could have traded him to Sacramento for Tyrese Halliburton, and then they wouldn't have had to give up Seth Curry and the 2 first-round picks. Just imagine if this was their team, Clark. If they had Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris, Tyrese Halliburton, Seth Curry, whoever you got on your bench, right, and your 2 first-round picks. Just imagine if that was the team that you had out there right now. Boy, that sounds really good, doesn't it? Sounds like you have everything that you need. And so I thought it was really cool, and I hope Doc Rivers does this some more, where he was talking about, Philadelphia and how he wanted, he didn't want James Harden. Like he was like, I couldn't get James to understand, like you got to play for the team and you got to and James didn't want to hear any of it. And by the way, one more thing, the best thing he could say about James Harden, the positive was he was really good in practice. Like he really loved playing basketball and he was really good in the guys in practice and loved playing one-on-one against guys and really worked at it.
Well, and the other thing is, the Clippers, they had to make that trade with Oklahoma City. Look at Oklahoma City right now. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is really good. Okay, Chet Holmgren, he was injured. Now he's back. He's playing. Like he's pretty, and their record right now, their record's pretty good. So I mean, at this point, you probably think they probably make the playoffs. So, and they're probably, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is still young. He's like in his prime. So it's like they're kind of set now. So,
well, yeah, and Oklahoma City will probably have a better record than the Clippers do.
Yep.
Like I just, this idea that this was a good idea. I can't, and I can't believe I understand that Daryl Morey, like the trade he made with the Clippers, it was all right. Like that was an all right move, but it's expiring contracts and draft picks. So if that doesn't work out right, it's like, I can't believe, how does Daryl Morey still have this job? Like, dude, you have butchered the 2 most important things you had to do, and it's a complete disaster.
Yeah.
Now, I think, and now maybe I'm wrong, but I think Philadelphia is going to be good. I think the move to Nick Nurse as coach is a good idea because he's really good technically, and he'll get them into the right stuff. And now that they have players that actually fit together, and are happy to be there and play for each other, that, wow, this has a chance to be really good. So yeah, be careful. I guess my message is, be careful what you wish for. And don't just go after. I know Daryl Morey is just, we got to get the star. We got to get the star. No, you got to get the right star. Okay? You got to get the right players on your team. Because if you get the wrong players on a basketball team, it is an unmitigated disaster. We've seen it, I don't know how many times throughout history. If you have the wrong guys, it's a disaster.
Yep.
And I was right on the James Harden trade. Just want to point that out.
I mean, yeah, that's pretty. I mean, that's a pretty awful trade. It's probably one of the more awful trades we've ever seen. And I mean, and what's going on with Ben Simmons? Didn't he get hurt again or something? Or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mess. He's always injured. I mean, he's going to be there until his huge contract runs out, and then he'll probably be making the minimum somewhere, sitting on somebody's bench. So yeah, it's really that's sad. I mean, that's sad that Ben couldn't get his act together, and it's sad that the Sixers didn't try to make the move sooner. They waited and waited and waited and waited, and then and then they think it's a home run by getting James Harden. And I was saying this at the time I first guessed it. I said that is not the move to make. That is a big mistake. Just trade for role players. You have a franchise. You got Embiid. He's a franchise player. You need to continue to build around him. So hopefully Doc goes on and has some more interesting stuff to say throughout the season. Because if you haven't listened to it, you should check it out. Because I thought he did a really good job, talking about how the league works and what it's like for players and all this stuff. I thought it was really fascinating, and especially just him letting it out of the bag about Philadelphia was great. It validated everything that I've ever thought.
Yeah.
All right. So, any predictions for this weekend, Clark? You think Michigan's going to beat Ohio State? What do you think?
Probably, yeah. I just don't, Michigan. I mean, Ohio State lost last year, and they had C.J. Stroud, and they don't have C.J. Stroud anymore. So,
yeah,
we'll see. But I would be pretty surprised if Ohio State was able to win. So, beyond that,
yeah,
the Dolphins better beat the Jets, man. Just please, God, don't lose to the Jets.
Yeah, the Jets are like our nemesis. Like I'm okay with losing to every other team. I really am. Please do not lose to the Jets because their fans are super annoying and ridiculous, and especially since the Jets are bad now, it would be embarrassing. Like when Marino used to lose to the Jets, it was embarrassing, because we should beat them every single time. And so I feel pretty good about us facing Tim Boyle. I feel like, we can, I feel like hopefully, but I will say this, we can't turn the ball over 3 times. You can't the formula for beating the Jets is simple. Move the ball, get to 20 points. So when you get down there and it's 4th and 1 at the 10, kick the field goal, McDaniel. Just get the points, because if you get to 20 points and you don't turn the ball over, there's no way the Jets can catch you. Yeah. They don't have the ability, especially with the way that the Dolphins defense is playing. So anyway, yeah, I think Michigan wins. I think that the Dolphins probably win. That Seattle-San Francisco game on Thanksgiving night, I think, is going to be interesting. I'm really fascinated to see how that goes. Anyway, all right, folks, thank you for tuning in.